Hello, this is RICKY, the Android Guy. Today I'm bringing you the latest and greatest on what happened at the Apple iPad mini announcement. All the highlights, all the best, and what we have to look forward to and what we don't have to look forward to. So let's start off by going to the main part. After 20 minutes of talking about irrelevant stuff, they finally got to the products. So the first product they got to was the MacBook Pro 13 inch, or MacBook 13 inch, which is now going to come with a Retina display. So this is pretty big because, Apple had previously made a MacBook Pro with Retina display, and now they'll also have this one with Retina display at a smaller size. Now, the main part about it is that it's $1,699, and although it does have a Retina display, the Retina display has some issues, and meaning that it doesn't really have support. Almost no app, not necessarily app, but programs in general support Retina display. Because of this, the Retina display of the higher version that started at $2,000 wasn't that big, wasn't taken that much in. It started at $2,100, and a lot of people didn't buy it. So we'll see if they have better luck with this one, being at about $400 less. So we'll see if it is a bigger seller or if it just doesn't sell as much again. So that's going to be the first thing. The second thing is the Mac Mini. They did bring a new one out, and they did. Oh, also I forgot to mention that on the MacBook they also took out the USB drive, or not USB drive, the optical drive. So they no longer have an optical drive there. On the new Mac Mini, they finally put USB 3.0, which was long overdue. For not having a desktop with USB 3.0 was pretty while back, and it was just fitting that they finally catch up with everyone. Now, of course, they also, along with the desktop feature, brought a new iMac, which they claimed was thinner, but in actuality it was just narrower towards the edge. And that was about it. It still had almost the same girth in the back, so it wasn't anything too different than that. It did, of course, again upgrade to USB 3.0, and they made a big deal out of something called Fusion Drive. Now, Fusion Drive has been on Windows 7 for a long time and even started its roots in Vista. Basically what the concept is having flash memory and hard drive memory work together so that everything runs faster. I myself have had this on my custom-built computer for about a year and a half now. So it's nothing really too new that they brought it, but again, Apple made it seem like they invented it, that it's something new that had never been done before. And this is just what a lot of techs in the industry don't like about Apple, is because they basically claim like they're making something different that has already existed for a very long time. But I digress. In terms of the iMac, it is $12.99, and at that price you get an i5 processor, 8 gigs of RAM, good graphics card, and a terabyte of storage. For the 27-inch, that'll start at $17.99 with essentially the same specs except a 2.9 gigahertz processor as opposed to 2.7. Those two will be shipping next month in November. But the important part to keep in that is that it's still not touchscreen. Apple is the only computer desktop maker pretty much on the market right now that does not have a touchscreen all-in-one computer. It just has hurt them, I feel, in the end, just because Windows has been doing it for so long. And now that they have an interface that is made for touchscreen, it's really kind of putting Apple more towards the back end of catching up in terms of all-in-ones, which they themselves were one of the pioneers of. So it just shows kind of a fallback on it. Now, iPads. There is now a iPad 4 or new iPad 2, whichever you want to call it. They didn't really specify. They were just saying, this is the fourth iPad. So I'm not sure how we're supposed to call it. It's kind of confusing. It's a confusing topic. But there is a fourth generation iPad. And what this has different from the new iPad, which is now the old iPad. What it has different is the A6X processor, which is fast, which is 2 times the speed of the A5X processor. Keeping in mind, not 2 times faster than the A6 processor, which of course they conveniently left out of this comparison. Which means it's probably the A6 processor but with a better graphics card, just like the A5X was. Not faster than the original A5. So what we can expect is the A6 processor that's on the iPhone 5 along with a better graphics card. Along with this, of course, they still have the 10-hour battery life, and they did make it so that it does, of course, have the lightning adapter. Now, there is a lightning to USB, but from what the announcement said, it made it seem like that USB would still only be for cameras, not for all USB devices, which, of course, would be a big downer as people got excited for a second and then immediately got their hopes down. So, we'll wait to see how that turns out. It will be having LTE with different carriers like Sprint, which it never did before. So that will also be a difference involved in it. Also, they did improve the iSight front camera. So now the front camera won't look horrible as it does on all other iPads. All other iPads have had a 0.3 megapixel, that is 0.3 megapixel camera in the front, which is why all of the FaceTimes have looked really horrible on iPads in the past, and now it should look at least decent, being a 1.2 megapixel camera. And those will remain at $499 for 16 gig or $629 for Wi-Fi and 4G LTE. Now the one that everyone was waiting on, which is the iPad mini. So first of all, I want to comment on that they took the longest time ever to get down to the price, which is what everyone was waiting for to determine how big this device would be. Price was going to be the deciding factor. So I will tell you right from the beginning, the price of this device is $329. So keeping that in mind, let's see what it has. So it is lighter and thinner than all other iPads, and is very comparable in lightness and thinness compared to most 7-inch tablets. It's actually lighter than all of them right now, and thinner by a hair in some of them. Obviously a little bit bigger because it is a 7.9-inch screen. It's 7.9 point something, so it's closer. It's really close to 8. I don't know why they just didn't call it an 8-inch screen. I guess, they just didn't want to call it that. They didn't want to go for 8-inch. They wanted to make it a little bit different. Now, this does have a benefit and a downside, though. The resolution is 1024 by 768. The benefit of this is that it's the same resolution as the original iPad, making all of the iPad apps to work on it. The major downside of this is the resolution is going to look like crap. The resolution on this is actually the worst out of every 7-inch tablet, which is interesting for Apple since they always talk about resolution being so important, being all resolutionary. This tablet is anything but. It's actually the lowest resolution for a non-10-inch tablet out on the market right now. And that is that, even the Nook and the Kindle beat it in resolution, and that's saying something. Now, the main thing, also the other thing is pixel density. For web browsing and that kind of experience, you have to zoom in pretty much for anything you're looking at just for it to be good. So it kind of takes away from the overall experience. Now, another downside to this is they kept the same aspect ratio. They kept the 4:3 aspect ratio, which they should have switched to 16:9, just like the iPhone 5 was, which is going to, again, hinder developers. Developers now have to make a separate app for the iPhone 4 and 4S. They also have to make a separate app for the iPhone 5. They have to make a separate app for the iPad mini and iPad 2. And then another separate app for the new old iPad. So the real thing is that they have begun to have more fragmentation than even Android has now. Android, if you make an app for 1280 by 800, you are going to get the majority of Android. And that's really the downside that they've created for themselves, and why developers have actually begun trending that we've been seeing now, leaving Apple. So that's actually pretty interesting that they would choose to go with a 4x3 as opposed to a 16x9. Now, they did some comparisons to a tablet that obviously was the Nexus 7, and talked about, you know, how much screen size difference it was and everything like that. But of course, they did leave out a couple of things, like price difference, as well as how the screen compared in terms of having not only price difference, but obviously resolution difference. Whereas zoomed out all the way on both tablets, you could actually see the Nexus 7 text, whereas you can't really make out most of the the iPad mini's text. Also, they talked about, you know, having tablet apps, and they showed apps like Yelp, but it's curious why they didn't show the YouTube app. I still don't know why they didn't do that. I mean, I've seen the YouTube app on an iPad, and seeing as how there is none, and then you have to use the iPhone app, it's kind of curious why they didn't do that one instead of Yelp. But, you know. So the other thing that we've seen is, you know, is that they have now an iPad that can fit in one hand. And that's what they were kind of really going on. They really wanted to hit that home, is that they now have an iPad that can fit in one hand. But unfortunately, you know, it won't really fit comfortably in one hand. As how wide it is, you actually really won't be able to hold it, the whole tablet, in one hand. You're actually going to be holding it by one side most of the time. Now, because it's light, this might be okay, but seeing how the picture is held and how we saw it on the video, not one actor in that video actually held the iPad from corner to corner. So it's curious to see how easy it would actually be to hold it in one hand, as opposed to just holding it on the side. Now, with 7-inch tablets, you can easily hold from the entire tablet from side to side with one hand. So it's kind of interesting to see how this will compare to those. Now, again, like I said, it will start at $329 for the 16 gig, and then go up $100 for each storage. They will remain having the iPad 2 out, as well as the new 4th generation iPad. So for the iPad mini, it'll start at $329. For the iPad 2, it'll start at $399. And for the iPad with Retina display, meaning the iPad 4 or the new iPad, new 2 iPad, I don't know. All these things, pre-orders will begin Friday, and they will be shipping on November 2nd. So, were you impressed by anything in this announcement? You know, Apple, Tim Cook, CEO, talked about how much innovation they had this year, yet from what we've seen, everything has just been catching up. Even with this tablet, you know, it's catching up to all the other 7 inches on the market in terms of resolution, in terms of price point, in terms of Wi-Fi. They barely got dual band. So it's catching up in a lot of ways that they have been falling behind in. And now this is the first time this happened, but last year, the 4S was the first time it fell behind as well. So we'll see how it turns out. Feel free to leave your comments and questions down below. And let me know what you guys think, and which tablet should I compare this to first when the iPad mini comes out. Would you like to see it compared to the Nexus 7, the Kindle Fire HD, or the Samsung Galaxy Tab 2? Please leave your comments and questions down below. This has been RICKY, the Android Guy.